Welcome to StopFake, the place where we set the record straight on fake news about Ukraine. I'm Jim Kovpak with StopFake's latest dissection of Russia's alternate reality. This week's disinformation menu brings you the following. Russia claims that the U.S. and Canada are ending military cooperation with Ukraine. Russia's man in the UN says no one in the Security Council supports Ukraine. And how about those 700 tanks in occupied eastern Ukraine? Where did they come from? So let's get to the details. Russia's Defense Ministry television channels Zvezda aired a story this week claiming that the U.S. and Canada were ending their military cooperation with Ukraine. Citing Ukrainian military analyst Serhiy Zhurets, Zvezda announced that several American and Canadian companies were no longer supplying Ukraine with components for weapons production. While speaking at a press conference examining why the West is not selling weapons to Ukraine, Zhurets, the director of the Defense Express Consulting Company, said that Ukraine would no longer be producing arms with certain companies. He never said that all cooperation with the U.S. and Canada would cease altogether. Ukraine, the U.S., and Canada continue to cooperate on military technology as demonstrated by recent new contracts and bilateral meetings. Last week, Canadian Ambassador Roman Vashuk met with Roman Romanov, the director of Ukraine's weapon production company Ukroboronprom, with the aim of deepening Ukrainian-Canadian weapons production. Ukroboronprom has ongoing projects with the Canadian branch of the aerospace company Pratt & Whitney and the avionics giant CMC Electronics. This month, Ukroboronprom also signed a memorandum with the American company Aeroscraft to produce NATO standard firearms in Ukraine. This week, Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Vitaly Churkin, told RT that Ukraine received no support from UN Security Council members during a meeting devoted to the escalated fighting in eastern Ukraine in the region of Avdiivka. They were supported by only the United Kingdom and the United States. The rest said that Minsk agreements must be carried out, Churkin said. Security Council members agreed that the conflict in the Donbass must be solved politically rather than militarily. At the same time, the United States, Britain, France, and other countries noted that Russia must fulfill its obligations under the Minsk agreements. U.S. Representative Nikki Haley said the dire situation in eastern Ukraine is one that demands clear and strong condemnation of Russian actions. She made it clear eastern Ukraine is just one part of Ukraine suffering because of Russia's aggression, and underscored that sanctions would remain in place until Russia returns control of the Crimean Peninsula to Ukraine. The UK ambassador to the UN, Matthew Rycroft, told the UN meeting that Russia always blames Ukraine for any escalation in fighting. This is an inversion of reality. The responsibility of the inception and continuation of the conflict in eastern Ukraine lies squarely with Russia and the separatists it supports, Rycroft said. France's permanent representative of the UN, François Delattre, called on all parties to resume the ceasefire in accordance with the Minsk agreements with the goal of restoring Ukraine's control over all of its internationally recognized borders, including Crimea. Ask Kyiv where the 700 tanks came from. Russia does not send tanks to the Donbass, declared Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov, responding to reports that the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic currently have some 700 tanks. The editor-in-chief of Russia's eminent military newspaper, Nationalnaya Oborona, Igor Korotchenko, told the Russian newspaper Komsomolskaya Pravda that military hardware in the occupied territories could come from three sources: spoils of war captured from the Ukrainian military, the tanks could have been sold illegally by Ukrainian commanders, or they could have been simply left on the seized territory. Information that the occupied territories had more tanks than the Ukrainian armed forces was disclosed in the February 9th edition of Russia's official television channel, Rossiya 1's weekly 60 Minutes program. Despite countless reports by international organizations, investigative groups, and satellite imagery showing Russia moving hardware into Ukraine, Moscow continues to make up new stories about how all this equipment managed to find its way to the Donbass. The site Lost Armor has been tracking equipment captured by the separatist groups. Since the outbreak of the separatist war, Lost Armor has counted 424 pieces of equipment taken by the separatists as spoils of war. The Russian internet newspaper, Ukraina.ru, published documents showing when separatists seized eastern Ukraine, only 25 T-64 type tanks remained in the region. There is much evidence that Russia supplied and continues to supply the self-proclaimed separatist republics with military equipment. NATO published satellite photos showing Russian combat troops with sophisticated heavy weaponry inside Ukraine. The investigative group Inform Napalm has published countless photographs and video showing Russian equipment being supplied to the occupied territories. Separatist militants have used T-72B and T-90A tanks, models which have never been a part of the Ukrainian arsenal. Independent journalistic investigations have also resulted in reports proving the presence of both Russian military equipment and the Russian military in the Donbass. That's it for this week. Beware of fakes, be vigilant, and if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, send it to us and we'll investigate it. Remember, consuming fake news is not only bad for your health and your brain, it makes our society paranoid, ignorant, and generally dumber, so don't do it. I'm Jim Kovpak, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.